Okay, we have reached fifth species counterpoint. This is the last one, and this one is kind of a cheat. Actually, it's not new. There's really nothing new here. Well, I take that back. There's one new thing in fifth species counterpoint. And that is that we can do whatever we want when it comes to the rhythms. Remember in first species counterpoint, we had what we called a 1-to-1 rhythmic division. So for every note in the cantus firmus, we would put one note in the counterpoint. In second species counterpoint, we could put two notes, 2-to-1. So for every whole note, we would put two half notes. Right? In third species, for every whole note, we would put 4 quarter notes, so 4-to-1. In fourth species, we would put 2 notes, but they would be tied over the bar, and we would be making suspensions all the way across. Now, in fifth species, we can do any of those things, and we can mix them up. We can do some quarter notes, some whole notes, some half notes tied across the bar. We can do any of those things in combination. Now that causes a couple new wrinkles, actually nothing new, but it gives us like a lot to think about all of a sudden, right? Because we have to think about our consonances and dissonances and our accented beats, right? So let's go over that rule one more time. Our heaviest, strongest accented beat is always the downbeat, right? No matter what species we're in, the downbeat is going to get the biggest accent. So that has to be a consonant. Unless you're in the middle of a suspension. Then it doesn't have to be, but it has to resolve correctly to a consonant. Our second strongest beat is, in a bar of 4/4, is beat 3, right? The second half of the measure. So if we split the measure in half, the second half of it is our second strongest beat. So if we're doing 2 half notes, then in a bar, let me do it. Oops. So if I was going to do F, G, something like that, then the downbeat is still the strongest. The offbeat, in this case, because it's 2 half notes, beat 3 here can be a dissonance. But if I've got quarter notes, something like that, let's actually not repeat a note. Let's do that. Let's just see if that works. I don't know. Now I have my strongest downbeat here, my second strongest downbeat, or my second strongest beat here. So that needs to be a consonant in this case. And then beats 2 and 4 can be dissonances. Let's see. So here we have an octave. Here we have a second, but that's not a strong beat, so that's okay. That's not an accented beat. That's okay. Here we have a third. That's a consonance. That's okay. And here we have a fourth, actually an augmented fourth. And that's a dissonance, but it's on beat 4. That's going to be okay. So this works. What if I did this? What about now? This is something new we can do. We couldn't do this before. So now we've got strongest beat on beat 1, right? Most or biggest accent on beat 1. That has to be a consonant still, no matter what we're doing. Unless it's a suspension. So the rules of third species counterpoint is what's going to govern us here. So what we have here is we don't have a note on beat 2, and that's okay. So beat 3 is going to be our second strongest beat, so that's going to need to be a consonant in this case, and this one can be a dissonance, beat 4. So we're going to pretend that we're looking at the rules of third species counterpoint here, and we have 4 quarter notes, even though we don't have one on beat 2. Now here's something else we could do. This is something new. I can go all the way up to eighth notes now. We couldn't do that in any counterpoint before, but now we can. And I'm going to do it with a neighbor tone. Any eighth note is going to be an allowed dissonance because it's in between our beats. So whenever you have an eighth note, the downbeat is going to be an accented beat, and the eighth note, the offbeat, is going to be unaccented, so it can be a dissonance. So using an eighth note for a neighbor tone like this, where we're going consonant, dissonant, consonant, back and forth to the same note, that can work. Because this can be a dissonance in between. Okay, so basically we can use any rhythmic subdivision we want. We can even go deeper into rhythmic subdivisions and use eighth notes. Now, let's take this cantus firmus that I wrote out here. This is actually a fairly famous one. So let's jump over a new video and let's write a counterpoint to this using fifth species counterpoint. Oh, one other thing. Fifth species counterpoint is also sometimes called free counterpoint because the rhythmic rules are pretty blurry. We can freely do whatever we want rhythmically as long as all the other rules hold true. As long as we don't make any parallels, as long as we keep track of our consonances and dissonances, and all of that. If we abide by all those rules, we're relatively free. We still have a lot of rules that we have to go by, but we sometimes call fifth species counterpoint free counterpoint.